May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and in honor of that, I wanted to share my experience living with social anxiety disorder. I was actually diagnosed with social anxiety disorder at 19 years old, and I'm 24 now, so that would have been 6 years ago. But knowing what I know now about social anxiety disorder and how it manifests in me, I would say that I could have been diagnosed with this as early as 9 years old. Now, I don't know if therapists actually will diagnose children with social anxiety disorder, but if they do or they did, if I had been diagnosed at 9, that would have been 16 years ago. When I first got diagnosed, I wanted to learn everything I could about it, so I went to the internet. I went on YouTube, I went on Google, I even went on Amazon because I wanted to see if there were any books written by people with social anxiety disorder. And what I found was that pretty much everything that was out there, all these people talking about it, were mental health professionals. They weren't actually people who lived with social anxiety disorder themselves. And that's really what I was looking for. It makes sense why there aren't a lot of people with social anxiety disorder out here online talking about it, because of the nature of the mental condition. But I'm hoping that I can help with that today by sharing my experience. I also noticed that there were a lot of people talking about social anxiety, but not social anxiety disorder. And those are two different things. First, I want to define social anxiety disorder so that we're all on the same page here. So I actually pulled up the DSM-5, which is the official book used by mental health professionals to help diagnose people with different mental conditions. And I pulled up the diagnostic criteria for social anxiety disorder, also known as social phobia. And I'd like to read that to you. There are actually 10 criteria, and I believe, it doesn't specify, but I believe you have to have all 10 to be diagnosed. The first criteria is that you have to have marked fear or anxiety about one or more social situations in which the individual is exposed to possible scrutiny by others. Examples include social interactions, like having a conversation or meeting unfamiliar people, being observed, such as when eating or drinking, and performing in front of others, such as when giving a speech. Note, in children, the anxiety must occur in peer settings and not just during interactions with adults. Criterion 2, the individual fears that he or she will act in a way or show anxiety symptoms that will be negatively evaluated, i.e. will be humiliating or embarrassing, will lead to rejection, or offend others. Number 3, the social situations almost always provoke fear or anxiety. Note, in children, the fear or anxiety may be expressed by crying, tantrums, freezing, clinging, shrinking, or failing to speak in social situations. Number 4, the social situations are avoided or endured with intense fear or anxiety. Criteria number 5 is that the fear or anxiety is out of proportion to the actual threat posed by the social situation and to the socio-cultural context. Number 6, the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is persistent, typically lasting for 6 months or more. Number 7, the fear, anxiety, or avoidance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Number 8, the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance, such as a drug of abuse, a medication, or another medical condition. Criteria number 9, the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is not better explained by the symptoms of another mental disorder, such as panic disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, or autism spectrum disorder. And number 10, if another medical condition, such as Parkinson's disease, obesity, disfigurement from burns or injury is present, the fear, anxiety, or avoidance is clearly unrelated or is excessive. The DSM-5 also asks mental health professionals to specify if the anxiety is performance only, if the fear is restricted to speaking or performing in public. So those are the 10 criteria needed to be diagnosed with social anxiety disorder. But there are actually a lot of myths and misunderstandings about social anxiety disorder in society today. So let's try to clarify what social anxiety disorder is by addressing some of these myths. For example, what is the difference between general anxiety, or we just call it anxiety, versus social anxiety? Anxiety is an experience that every single one of us humans have. It's actually necessary for our survival. It is a fight or flight response, which is activated by the sympathetic nervous system, and it helps us to get out of dangerous, life-threatening situations as quickly as possible. So our logical brains are kind of slow with figuring out what the best course of action is in a situation. And if you are on a hike and you come across a bear, you can't just be standing there trying to think of the best course of action, like, what should I do? You need to get out of there quickly. You need to make a decision about what you're gonna do, how you're gonna react. Maybe you're running away, maybe you're playing dead, but whatever that is, your body needs to do that ASAP. And so that is where the sympathetic nervous system comes in and anxiety comes in. Anxiety helps you to make those split-second decisions that you need to make so that you can actually protect yourself and survive a life-threatening situation. And this applies to a variety of situations where you could potentially be in danger. It's something that every single one of us experiences. Anxiety is feelings of worry and dread, and these feelings are very intense. So they're not understated, they are very intense in your body and dramatic. Social anxiety, on the other hand, is anxiety, but it's anxiety that happens in social situations. Now, a long, long time ago, social situations could potentially be life-threatening if people didn't like you and they rejected you and they didn't want you to hang out with them. That could be a big problem. Today, not so much, but we still have those everlasting effects. And so it's very common. Pretty much everybody experiences social anxiety, and this could be when you are giving a presentation, or it could be going in for a job interview. It could be talking to somebody new or telling somebody that you like that you have feelings for them. These are all common scenarios in which somebody could experience social anxiety. So now let's talk about the difference between social anxiety and social anxiety disorder, because they're not the same. Social anxiety disorder is social anxiety, but it's kind of like another level. If you're experiencing social anxiety, this is probably going to be in a situation where it would make sense to experience it, and you're probably only experiencing it fairly rarely. It's not impacting your everyday life or anything like that. But if you have social anxiety disorder, you are feeling social anxiety in potentially almost every social situation that you're in. Now, this is going to vary from person to person that has social anxiety disorder, but generally I would say almost every social situation, and if not every social situation, would be one where somebody with SAD would experience anxiety. Somebody could experience anxiety when talking with friends. Of course, those normal experiences of feeling anxiety when you are giving a presentation or going in for a job interview, but you might also experience anxiety if somebody just looks at you, if somebody walks past you, if somebody says hello. And because of the sheer amount of situations where a person is experiencing anxiety, this kind of person will avoid a lot of these social situations, and it will greatly impact their daily life. Social anxiety disorder is social anxiety that you're experiencing daily in almost every social situation, and anxiety that is impacting your everyday life and your normal functioning. Now, a big common myth about social anxiety disorder is that it just means you're shy, but that's not true. Social anxiety disorder is a mental illness, and essentially it is the fear of negative evaluation by other people. Shyness, on the other hand, is a personality trait, and it's not necessarily something that's negative. In different cultures, shyness can be seen as a positive thing, and it is not necessarily going to negatively impact your daily functioning. So, social anxiety disorder, mental illness, shyness, personality trait. Another myth is that people with social anxiety disorder are afraid of people. That's not true. People with social anxiety disorder are afraid of being negatively evaluated by people. So it's sort of more a fear of rejection, criticism, and judgment by other people, not the people themselves. So I hope that cleared up any confusion about what social anxiety disorder actually is. Now let's get into what my experience with social anxiety disorder is like. I think it might be helpful if I describe what anxiety feels like for me. And for me, it feels like fire in my upper back, my neck, and that fire is just like a burning sensation. I also feel very tense in those same places, plus my jaw, and I actually have TMJ from clenching my jaw so much. TMJ is when your jaw joints are inflamed and you feel a lot of pain in your jaw, and it can actually be hard to move it sometimes. Like for me, I've definitely experienced where my jaw has actually locked and I can barely open my mouth enough to get food in there. So it can be a very difficult thing to deal with. Another physical symptom is sweating, but for me, I only sweat in my armpits when I'm anxious. So if I'm sweating because it's hot out, I'm gonna be sweating everywhere. But if I'm sweating because I'm anxious, I just sweat under my arms. My breathing is very shallow. My mind will be racing, and it'll be to the point where my mind goes blank. Like I'm so anxious that I literally can't think. It can also be very restless. It's kind of hard to sit still. It's easier to be moving and doing things. I feel, of course, a lot of worry, a lot of stress, a lot of dread and fear. And I can feel like fear to the point of being frozen. And I don't think that this is necessarily seen by other people, but if I want to say something that I'm anxious to say, and that could be, you know, maybe asking a question or changing the conversation topic, I will be yelling at myself internally to just say the thing, and I cannot physically get myself to speak. So I'm just like frozen on the inside. The best way that I can describe the feeling of social anxiety disorder is if you've ever performed in a talent show or a play or something where you had a spotlight on you and you were on stage either by yourself or you felt like you were by yourself. I actually had this experience in 4th grade. I was in the talent show and I performed a song with my best friend that we wrote together. So it was just me and her on stage. We had a spotlight on us, but I felt like I was alone because we're standing next to each other, so I couldn't really see her unless I turned my head. And I just was completely frozen. I was very stiff. I felt like I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I felt like I had all of these eyes on me and people were negatively judging me. I just felt absolutely terrified and frozen, and like people were thinking all these horrible things about me, and like I didn't have control over my body. Like I couldn't be relaxed, I couldn't think. And that feeling is how I feel in every social situation. I feel that way when somebody looks at me. I feel that way when somebody walks past me and just waves or says hello. I feel that way if I'm in a bathroom stall and somebody comes into the stall next to me. They can't see me except for my feet, but I still feel that way. And of course I feel that way in other social situations where it might make a little bit more sense, like when I'm giving a presentation or going in for a job interview, something like that. And I'm saying that in present tense, but I actually don't experience a lot of anxiety in the very minor social situations anymore, luckily, after getting treatment. But that was something that I did experience growing up until I received treatment, and I want to say 21 years old. I know I was diagnosed at 19, but I'll get into it later. Of course, social anxiety disorder makes it really difficult to make friends. I don't know if I've initiated any friendships like growing up in like my school-aged years. It was more so that people would come up and talk to me and kind of follow me around, and then eventually I'd warm up to them and we'd be friends. But I wouldn't really seek people out, and a lot of times people would be talking to me, wouldn't really contribute much to the conversation because I would just feel frozen and my mind would be blank. I couldn't think and I didn't know what to say. And I don't know if this is an anxiety thing or if this is a me thing, but I've never been interested in small talk or been good at it. Like, it did not come naturally to me, so I just really did not know what to say in social situations. And honestly, like, I felt so much anxiety in so many situations that I was just very irritable. And I don't necessarily think this came out to people that didn't really know me very well or people at school, but it was very much internal. Like, if somebody looked at me, I'd be thinking, like, stop looking at me. Like, didn't your mom ever tell you it was rude to stare at people? Like, why are you looking at me? Is there a booger in my nose or something? Like, just mind your own business. Or if somebody would come up and start talking to me, I'd be thinking, like, oh my God, leave me alone. Like, can't you read the room? Like, I was over here by myself for a reason. So I just felt irritable a lot of the time because I was just so anxious. It was like, I don't want to deal with this. Get away from me. There are definitely certain types of experiences that make me anxious, or you could say scared. And then there are experiences that make me feel terrified, like absolutely terrified, frozen, can't control myself, can't think, like we just can't deal with it. Like anxiety to like another level. And certain experiences that give me that level of anxiety would be like singing in front of people, talking to somebody that I'm romantically interested in, giving presentations, things like that would always give me a ridiculous amount of anxiety. It was just so unmanageable. I couldn't even consider trying to deal with that and overcome that because I was just so anxious about everything. Like, it was just too much to try to take on this huge thing when I had all these small things that I needed to deal with. I specifically remember this one experience where I had to give a presentation, and I think that this just really demonstrates like how my anxiety was. It was this presentation in 9th grade. I remember that it was an English class, and I'm sure it didn't help that this teacher was particularly strict and we weren't allowed to like read off a paper. We could have index cards, but we were meant to like make eye contact with people and look around the room. Like, that was part of the grading criteria. We had to like dress up all business casual or whatever for it. So it was like a big thing. But I was super anxious about this. I remember 3 weeks before the presentation, waking up at night, sweating and shaking with anxiety, completely dreading this presentation. And that would happen every night leading up to that presentation. And every single day I would just be thinking about it and dreading it the entire time. And I had always experienced dread and anxiety leading up to presentations and during the presentation, but that was definitely the worst, where like I actually was waking up from sleeping. Normally, like, my sleep time was my relaxed time. I had no issue sleeping, but I was actually waking up out of sleep, sweating and shaking with anxiety about this presentation weeks in advance. Like, not just like a week, but like 3 weeks in advance. And that's not a normal experience. When you feel so much anxiety, you also avoid things. So I avoided a lot of social situations. That's honestly still something that I deal with. Like, I'm much better about, especially more like everyday or like low threat social situations, but there's definitely still some avoidance there, and I think I may always have those tendencies. Moving on to getting treatment for my anxiety. This obviously happened after I was diagnosed and made aware that this was something that I have. Honestly, I've tried so many things, and the only thing that has worked for me personally is medication. I mean, if you look up any article on how to treat anxiety by yourself, I've done it. I've tried everything on the list. I tried having a consistent sleep schedule and getting enough sleep. I ate a balanced diet. I regularly exercised. I tried individual therapy with multiple different therapists. I tried CBT. I tried group therapy with multiple different groups. I tried journaling. I tried meditation. Like, you name it, I've probably tried it. And I would try these things for a decent amount of time too. Like, when I tried meditating, I meditated for twice a day for 6 months straight. And I just found that none of these things had a positive effect long term. Like, maybe it would work for 3 months and then it just wouldn't work anymore. And so it's like, well, why am I gonna continue doing this when it's not actually helping? The only thing that actually helped me long term was medication. And I was also very lucky because it was the very first medication that I tried at the first dose that I tried. It worked, and it actually got rid of my anxiety in like the minor social situations. It doesn't make it fully go away, but it makes it so much more manageable because I can actually tackle the things that are giving me way more anxiety, like to the terrified level, because I don't have anxiety in all of these other situations that I have to deal with as well. I do just want to say that basic self-care things like making sure you're getting enough sleep, eating a balanced diet, regularly exercising, these are all things that I think we should all be doing. We all really need to do, and we'll thrive or give ourselves the best chance of thriving if we do these things. But in my experience, it didn't actually help with my anxiety, and it definitely didn't get rid of it. I just feel like these are necessities for sort of setting me up for success and like helping me keep a consistent baseline. So in other words, like I can't actually help my anxiety and make it better. It can't get better if I don't do these basic things. So now it's been many years later, and I've been able to work on a lot of my anxiety. There's still more work to go, but I just wanted to share some of my wins, like some of the things that are just they've gotten so much better because of now having this diagnosis and, you know, taking my medication and being able to actually work on the things that I need to work on. The first is giving presentations. It's so much easier. I actually don't really experience that much anxiety around giving presentations anymore, which is insane because that was one of the things that made me terrified. Like it was one of the most anxiety inducing things, and it's not anymore. I actually give a lot of presentations in my job, like very regularly. I do this, and I do it to big groups of people. I do it for small groups of people. I'm just doing them all the time. At most, maybe I get anxious like an hour before the presentation. Sometimes I'm a little anxious during, sometimes I'm not. It just kind of depends on the presentation. But what's insane is that I actually can think during a presentation now. Like I can actually have thoughts. I can think a little bit more on the spot, and I can remember things, so I don't have to just like stare at a paper or a PowerPoint slide, and I can actually walk around the room and interact with people and things like that. And that's never something I would have been able to do before. There's definitely no interruptions in my sleep or dreading presentations weeks beforehand either, so huge win. And if anyone's wondering how I did that, I honestly think it was just that I was forced to give so many presentations over time that eventually it got boring. Like it happened at some point in college. I realized like I was given another presentation to do, and instead of feeling all this anxiety about it, I actually was like, okay, another one, like add it to the list, like we got this, we can bust this out, like no problem. Another presentation, we can do it. So it was almost like this mindset of being bored with it, of like, okay, another one. Well, I know how to do this. You know, I've given so many presentations. I know what I need to do. I know essentially what the outcome is going to be, probably neutral or positive, so we can do this, like whatever. That really helped me to feel way more relaxed about it instead of feeling super anxious. Another big win is small talk. I'm so much better at it now, and sometimes I even enjoy it. I don't want it to go on forever, but I've really mastered that, and now I can pretty much small talk with anybody, at least a little bit, and make it so much easier to start conversations and even just have a short conversation, like, you know, saying hello to my coworkers at work. Small talk just really helps with connecting with people, and it just comes way more naturally to me now. Another big thing that's helped me is lowering my expectations of myself, and I think this could be like a really big topic that I talk about because, you know, I used to be very perfectionistic, and now I'm way more relaxed, specifically with myself. I used to have this belief that like if I was late, I was a bad person and I was being super disrespectful of somebody else's time. And so I would feel so anxious leading up to something because I didn't want to be even like 10 seconds late. And now, I mean, I aim to be on time, and I usually am, especially when it comes to appointments and things like that. But if it's something way lower stakes, I guess, or it's something that I'm doing a lot, like even like going into work every day, I'm usually like 5 to 10 minutes late. And I just want to say, like, I'm a salaried employee, so I don't have to clock in, and my boss and coworkers are totally fine with me coming in 5 to 10 minutes late. But anyway, even just like that 5 to 10 extra minutes, it just helps me to feel so much more relaxed because I'm not stressed like, oh my God, if I'm like 1 minute late, I'm a horrible person. Like, nobody really cares. I was just putting that on myself and nobody else was putting that on me. Honestly, most people are a little late, so and you know, stuff happens and you end up being a little late. Like, it's really understandable. There are definitely situations where I feel like I need to text somebody, like if I'm gonna be late, like I'll just let them know, like, hey, I'm running like 10 minutes late. But in a lot of situations, it's not even necessary, and it's really not a big deal, and it doesn't make you a bad person at all. And so that's just kind of extended to other parts of my life too. Like, I'm just a lot more like reasonable and relaxed with myself, and let go of these unrealistic expectations that I put on myself, and that's helped a lot with my anxiety. So that's kind of an overview of my experience with social anxiety disorder. I hope that you found this helpful, maybe validating or educational. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope to see you in the next one.